Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of 10 Talk, where we'll be giving our weekly top 10s of, well, anything. And this week we have a special edition for our first episode. We're going to be giving our top 10 horror movies of all time. I'm your host, Chad, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joe, who absolutely loves horror movies, so this is a show right up his alley. How you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm doing pretty good. It's exciting to do something new like this, and kind of fun because we could obviously have different guests on and do different top 10s, so there's a lot of possibilities with this. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm kind of curious to see how our list pan out here.
Definitely. Every week we're planning on doing a top 10 different anything. Could be we're doing top horror movies this week. We could do a top 10, I don't know, songs, top 10 superheroes, top 10 sodas, anything. We're just going to do our top 10. And what we're going to do is we're each going to give our top 10, kind of compare our lists. But how should we go about this? Should I give my full top 10 and you, or should I do my 10, then you do your 10, then you do your 9, I do my 9, your 9, and so on?
I kind of like the I kind of like the idea of doing like each of our 10s and then kind of going down and kind of, like you say your 10 choice and why you picked it. I'll say my 10 choice, why I picked it. Okay. I feel like that works good, kind of like going on each level and seeing kind of how we compare in that sense.
Well, that's our format. We're coming up with this on the fly, on the air, because that's how we do things. We are not the best prepared people. We did about 9 takes of our little intro there.
Yeah, but it's actually, I kind of like that idea because it's kind of like, because I was going to say too, like the criteria for this is kind of different. I'm pretty sure both our ends, and I wasn't really, like we didn't really come up with a criteria. We were just like, pick your top 10 favorite horror movies. So, before we do start, I'm going to say that I kind of, looked into, obviously, how much I liked it. I mean, how much it kind of like, I don't want to say scared, but kind of so much how, it kind of stuck with you the first time you seen it, and kind of how much impact it's had in kind of culture. So I kind of had like a different criteria there, just because I know some of my choices, I might like, I might not put in a choice that, someone else might put in, but that's because I'm going off of what I've seen more so than, just kind of the history of a movie that's been out there for a long time.
We should mention these are our favorites. We're not saying these are the top 10 best.
Exactly. That's kind of what I want to get across just before we do that, because it could easily be misconstrued.
And this was kind of tough for me because you're more the horror fan. Like I like some horror movies here and there, but I don't really watch them all that often. So I kind of had to stretch my mind and come up with some that I've seen, and it was pretty tough. I don't know about you.
I don't want to say I had fully the opposite effect, but it's kind of like I felt like I had so many like different choices. Like it was kind of like, and not just that, but there's so many like sequels to movies. Like especially like you get into like Friday the 13th, right, which has like so many movies. That's like, I didn't want to just pick a whole bunch of the same franchise. So what I kind of did was I kind of just stuck to one movie out of each franchise that maybe defined it for me, or I kind of liked the best. So.
Yeah, you can't just say like my number 7 choice is all of the Friday the 13th movies. Cause
exactly.
So many movies, and there's like good ones, there's bad ones, so.
And not just that, but there's also remakes and stuff too. So you have to make sure you put like the originals. Yeah, so it's like, I think for me it was kind of like there's so many honorable mentions to the list and so many horror movies that could be on the list, but it's like at the same time you have to justify why you're putting the top ones on the list. So that's why I think, at least on my end, makes it kind of one of those lists where it's like, I did feel like I rounded out the best top 10 out of a whole bunch of movies. For you, I'm guessing it's probably more just, I think it's like the 10 best you've seen, which in a sense kind of, gets you there too, remembering some of those movies and why you picked them.
Well, what do you say we jump into this? How about you go first, Mr. Horror Movie Fan?
All right. We're going from reverse, right? So number 10?
Yep, number 10.
My number 10, because I kind of thought about it, and I didn't want to just be, because, some horror movies came out in a particular era, so I don't want to just be like, I'm just going to pick this one era, like, 80s or 90s. So I picked Paranormal Activity as my number 10, because I feel that was kind of the defining horror movie of the, 2010s so far. I mean, not so much like, the best horror movie. I think it's just the one that's had the most long-lasting impact, even though, as it went on, it kind of became a parody of itself and stuff. I think the original kind of holds up as one of those movies that kind of, broke a different ground for him, because now you see like a whole bunch of movies filmed the same way, which is kind of perspective of being kind of like, it's found footage, but, it's not just like a camera following someone. It's more so just, you have all these different type of jump scares, like you're following along with the story, like you're an inanimate object around with these people, and it's just kind of an interesting story, kind of different with the whole paranormal aspect. So I had to pick that for number 10 because I feel like, when I first saw it, I feel like it was pretty spooky to see a movie like that because you're not so used to that style. And I thought, culturally, it kind of had like an impact on various, horror movies that have come out and kind of, was a phenomenon of its time. And I feel like it's one of those movies that will hold up in a sense in being kind of that example of a modern horror movie.
I feel like I'm going to say this for quite a few of your choices because you watch a lot more horror movies than I have. I have never seen any of the Paranormal Activity, so I can't really say anything about them. I know they're pretty popular, so a lot of my choices are actually older movies, so I can't really speak too much on like the more current ones.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, there's a lot of good current ones too, but it's like it's hard to beat some of the originals. We'll get more into the list as it goes on, but I understand what you're saying.
For my number 10, I went with Poltergeist 2 from the 80s, and it's not even so much that I like the movie, although it is a good movie. I just always found that old man in it really terrifying. And if we're just talking about horror movies where the point of the movie is to scare you, that guy alone is like a good selling point, especially that scene where he, like, the little girl's playing outside, Carol Ann, and, like, he walks up, like, the old, like, he's got, like, that old preacher look, and he's got, like, the rotten-looking teeth, and he's just... And what made him look even creepier is the guy that was playing the role actually, like, died, like, not... I think he was actually dying of cancer as this movie was made, which is terrible, but it kind of added to the movie in a way because he looked that much creepier. And just that scene where he's up at the door and he's just like, "Let me in." Scared the crap out of me as a kid. I watched it on YouTube last night. It still scares the crap out of me. I think that may be the creepiest scene I've ever seen in any movie.
It's funny. I've seen Poltergeist. I definitely, I've seen it in my past, but it's not really a movie that I've like a series of movies that I've ever kind of closely followed, if that makes sense. It's kind of been more of one of those types of movies that, I've always heard about. It's kind of funny you mentioned that, obviously, unfortunately, he passed, during that. I remember there's another story too. I think it may have been the first one, or maybe it was the second one, where one of the little girls in that actually passed away as well. And it's just
there's
that movie.
Actually like a curse. Yeah. Because like a lot of people that have been in the Poltergeist movies like died like shortly after. I think one girl in the first one was murdered, and the little girl that played Carol Ann,
she
died. She died before the third one even came out. So there's been a lot of deaths surrounding that, and
I think that makes it spookier in a sense too. Go ahead.
It does. It's a pretty fascinating backstory. I remember I watched I think it was True Hollywood Story or something, just on like the Poltergeist curse, and I think it's even more fascinating than the movies themselves.
Yeah, probably that's what even though I've seen the movies a bit, I mostly seen them when I was a kid, so it's hard for me to kind of remember them. I haven't seen them in a long time, but I know that's kind of what sticks out to me. And I believe they made a remake of that. I haven't really seen that, but I remember there was a.
They did. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I'm curious to see how that comes out. But
it was a TV series in the '90s too. I remember The Undertaker was on.
I don't think I've ever seen that. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. I don't even remember him being on. That's pretty awesome, though. But I definitely can see that as your number 10 choice. I mean, that's kind of what the series that I didn't put on my list, but I could definitely it's one of those series that I didn't really think of because I've seen a lot of it as a kid. But that's one of those series I definitely think if some people who have seen those movies and put them on, or would put them in a pretty high spot.
All right, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is another. This one's more the 2000s, which I went with, which was the Final Destination movies, because I feel like those were a pretty good series of movies, also in a different style. Like I kind of try to go off a little off the cusp of movies that weren't just about like slasher movies or stuff like that. This was more of a movie about kind of death, cheating death, and kind of how that comes to impact things. And I feel like these type of movies kind of inspired a whole series of movies and kind of captivated an audience in terms of the unique stuff they did. And I feel like they kind of, were kind of like a modern day type of like teen movie in a sense, where you kind of had like all these different scenarios and characters. But that was my number 9 because I wanted to pick something from the 2000s, and I felt like that was the best representation.
Yeah, I think I saw one of them years ago, but I barely remember anything about it. But I like the concept. I think it's a unique idea of just all these things that could kill you. It's a unique idea.
Yeah, definitely. What's your number 9?
My number 9 is Psycho, which is a classic. I'm a big fan of Hitchcock movies, and there's really not much that can be said about it that hasn't been said 1,000 times before. It's just a brilliant movie. It was brilliant how they made it look like this lady was going to be like the main star, but then she died like shortly into the movie. And, it stands the test of time. They even have the Bates Motel show on now, which is like the prequel of it. And definitely a classic.
Yeah, see, that's probably the biggest omission I didn't put on my list because, like, again, I seen that growing up. It never really stuck with me because I seen it so early that it like I couldn't put it on my list because that's a movie I kind of should go back and watch sometime and just kind of like see the impact of it, but I haven't done that, so it's kind of like I didn't include it on my list. But that's definitely one that again I felt was like a big omission, and I feel like I completely understand you talking about it. It's like you said, it's still relevant to this day. And one of the fun parts because I've gone to Universal Studios a few times is they give you that studio tour, and there's always like they always like show the Bates Motel, and they have like a guy like dressed as him kind of come at you with a
That's
knife.
awesome.
Yeah, so that's it's definitely still a cultural thing, and I definitely would agree with that as a high spot on the list. Like I said, nothing really against the movie. I just really haven't seen it as an adult to kind of put it on this list. So.
And I think that shower scene is probably one of the most iconic scenes in horror movie history.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of those scenes that it's often like kind of duplicated or parodied and whatnot. I feel like that's probably is one of maybe the iconic scene in horror movie history because you could ask anyone that and they kind of know what it is.
All right, what's your number 8?
All right, so we had 2010s, 2000s, now we have kind of 90s. I went with the Scream series for this because I feel like that was kind of one of those defining 90s movies in a sense, like even beyond just horror genre. I feel like that's a movie that a lot of people, teens and stuff, grew up with at that point in time. And it spawned sequels and stuff, but I feel like the original kind of had all that stuff going on. Even the parodies, like the scary movie parodies, kind of parodied off of that. So I feel like that was a very cultural one. I feel like at the time, I feel like that movie was pretty good in the sense of just being kind of a different thing because you had the slasher aspect, but it was kind of like you kind of had this mystery of who that killer actually was. It was kind of like a whole bunch of things wrapped into one. So I definitely think that was a good movie for its time. And that's my number 8 choice.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Scream, but I did like how they took like all those horror tropes and kind of made a story out of it. I thought that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny you actually chose that for number 8 because I chose a movie that came out right around the same time. I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, that's a good one. I should have chose that, but I did not. Go ahead.
I'm not a big fan of slasher movies, and there was like a long period where it felt like every horror that came out was a slasher movie. But I always liked that one, and I haven't seen it in many years, so I can't speak too much on it. But I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, definitely. That's one I've seen before as well, and it was kind of introducing me to an era of Scream, and I feel like at the end of the day, I think Scream had more of a cultural impact. But I definitely did like that movie as well, and I like the sequel too. I forgot. I think it's I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. I remember that one too. I've seen it not too long ago. So yeah, I definitely liked those movies and felt they were a good series as well. It's kind of like one of those things where they kind of competed with each other in a sense in that style.
And believe it or not, it's actually not the most recent movie on my list. I have another one of those to come later, but. Number 7.
See, I've used up all my recent movies now because now it's kind of like, even though there are good recent movies, to me it's like I couldn't ignore some of the classics, especially growing up as a kid. You kind of see those and they're more scary. But my number 7 is actually a Hitchcock movie as well, The Birds, which I know you picked that as a good one. I always, it's funny because I saw that movie a little later than being a kid, and I kind of saw probably when I was like a teenager more so, and I remember it was like just freaky to me in general. Just seeing these birds just kind of like causing this scene. It's just kind of a different, unique type of horror movie that I kind of liked, and I felt like should be on this list because it's just one of those things where it's like we talk about slasher movies and stuff. It wasn't a slasher movie, it was anything like that. It was just these the everyday things, birds that kind of creep you out and just going crazy. I enjoy that movie.
We have run into our first double here on the list, and I'm kind of curious whether I should talk about it now or should I talk about it when it comes to my part on the list.
That's a good question.
I should talk about it on my
I was gonna agree with that.
All right. What's your number?
You gotta go with your number. Wait, that was my number.
My number.
It's your number.
Sorry, I lost track. Number 7, our first episode. I already lost track of the list. My number 7 was the Twilight Zone movie from the 80s, which I'd actually never seen the TV show before I saw that movie. I saw that movie when I was fairly young, and scared the crap out of me, by the way, especially that part at the beginning where they're like in the truck and the guy like you want to see something really scary and then you see his face like turn into that terrifying thing. That scared the crap out of me as a kid. And the rest of the movie, like there's parts of it that are scary and then there's parts of it that aren't really that scary, but they make you think. And it really made me like want to check out the Twilight Zone series, which I'm still a fan of to this day. So I kind of love it just for that, just the fact that it introduced me to something that I'm still a fan of to this day. I think the Twilight Zone, when we're talking about horror, is just all-time classic.
Yeah, definitely. That's not one I chose myself, but I definitely can see why he did. I mean, I feel like as a kid, I kind of just, it's funny because like I had an appreciation for like sitcoms and stuff, and I kind of got into those more as I went on, but it's like Twilight Zone was something I kind of had to get into more as I got older, if that makes sense. It's like something, because you said a good word there, it makes you think. I think that's kind of something that, as a kid kind of gets lost on me, where it's like, as a kid you're just kind of into, the action and what's going on, whereas for me it was kind of like...
It gets better as you get older, for sure.
Yeah, as I got older, it's kind of like I understood more the thinking aspect and the more suspense aspect, because you and I actually watch that sometimes, we just like watch Netflix stuff together, and it's kind of like, oh man, it's like, just watching that kind of makes me appreciate it, whereas as a kid I kind of just thought of it as like, oh, this isn't what I'm used to as a horror movie, or as a horror.
That and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, that's another one we watch sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I appreciate those two as kind of, more what they are now, and I don't think I've actually seen the movie, believe it or not.
Really?
The scene you talked about is obviously familiar, and I've heard things about it. But I don't think I've seen that movie, to be honest.
There was some sadness surrounding it, much like the Poltergeist movies. Some people actually died. There was a helicopter scene where, like, the helicopter, killed some people, and it was a pretty big news story back in the day. It's a pretty fascinating and sad thing if you want to Google that, too. But, yeah, I always enjoyed that movie. All right, number 6. Appropriate number for this.
Yeah, number 6 is one that I know people go back and forth with as a horror movie, but I consider it one, and I think there's arguments to be made for it.
Spice World?
I did see that movie, not by choice. My sister used to have that on tape, so I'd see it quite often. But
it's pretty scary.
My number 6 choice is Jaws, which
I think it's a horror movie.
Yeah, like it just, there's debates around that, but I feel like it is. And I feel like that's a movie that's kind of like one of those movies that culturally like impacted a lot of people. Like, still to this day, I think Jaws is kind of looked upon horror movie and kind of influences a lot of movies that are still made to this day about like sea sharks and, all kinds of different sea animals. I think it kind of originated from that. Kind of like The Birds. I kind of like it because it's something different. It's not your everyday slasher flick. It's something, more methodical and more different. And I kind of had to put down this list because I feel like culturally that was such a big phenomenon. I feel like as a kid, kind of made me fear the water and fear, sharks and stuff like that. So I feel like, to me, that had to go on my list somewhere.
Believe it or not, I've actually never seen Jaws before. I've never seen any of them.
I mean, it's kind of tough sometimes because it's like, it's not, I mean, maybe you'd enjoy it more because you see more of the methodical type. It's not really like your typical horror movie and stuff, but it does get, creepier as it goes on. Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
I know it has some bad sequels. I know, like, Jaws 3D is talked about. I watched a review of that, and it looked really, really comical.
I think most horror movies have pretty bad sequels, to be honest with you. Like even, you could have good sequels, but I mean, like, even as you down further their franchises, the ones that have like a lot of them are bound to strike out at some point.
Well, my number 6 actually, it's kind of funny. You mentioned like just the idea of it being like a simple concept, and that's kind of the same reason I chose this. Is Cujo?
Oh, that's good.
I saw when I was What's that?
I said that's a good one to pick.
Yeah, I saw that when I was a kid, and it terrified me. And I'm not really like you. Like, I'm not really afraid of dogs, like, because I had dogs growing up. But after watching this, it's like you'd be kind of weary of being around any dogs, because it's not even really like this out there concept. It's just the idea of something that could happen, a dog that gets rabies. And these people are, like, trapped in a car, and this dog is just... And I think what really, really kind of gets to you is the fact that Cujo was a good dog at the start of the movie. He was like this friendly St. Bernard. But then he gets rabies and he just goes crazy. And I think in a weird way that kind of makes it more terrifying, because they just brought in this dog from the start and he's scary. I mean, yeah, it's scary, but it's not quite, it doesn't bother you. It's not quite as disturbing as the idea of this friendly dog that seems like a dog you'd want to have as a pet or something becoming this monster.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because you would think, like, with my fear of dogs and stuff, that'd be a movie I've seen a lot. It was always a movie I heard about because my grandfather loved it, but I never really seen it until, like, I'm not going to say a few years ago, but maybe, like, about a decade ago or so I saw it, and it kind of, even then it kind of just caught my eye and just kind of was one of those movies that you kept watching just because of the the viciousness of the dog as it goes on and just how it goes. So I definitely can agree with that, and that's actually because I came up with a huge list. It's one of my honorable mentions to be on there. That's one of those movies that didn't make it on my list, but I definitely could easily see the argument for it.
Number 5.
Okay, number 5 is actually another movie that obviously I wasn't even born for when it came out, but I kind of saw it in retrospect and kind of appreciated the tone of it, even how it was filmed now kind of looks creepy, and that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, which was a pretty big movie of its time, and even to this day kind of spawns various sequels. And I feel like this is a movie that kind of has to be on the list because in a sense it kind of impacted a lot of culture, and it kind of was a kickstarter to the slasher films in a sense, and kind of you had iconic characters like Leatherface come out of it. So I had to pick that franchise. I feel like I kind of saw the remakes a little bit before I saw the actual original movie, but I appreciate the original movie too, and kind of the way it's filmed is kind of just eerie because these days you get like a lot of overproduced films. Back then it was a whole different scenario, just kind of added to it.
Yeah, I can't remember if I've seen that or not. I feel like I did as a kid, and maybe my memory is wrong here, but I seem to remember like one scene where he's like chasing people in the daytime.
Yeah. There's scenes where he chases people in the daytime. I think there's scenes where go ahead.
I thought so, and I think that's kind of what makes it creepier too. Is like you're so used to horror movies that all take place at night that to see someone being chased in the daytime is actually kind of eerie.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where I think a lot of that movie is because, you look at slasher films and sometimes you think, oh, it's so over the top and it's so ridiculous, but you could easily believe in this, like, small town that there's families like that out there that are kind of creepy like that and kind of do that stuff. It's like, I think that was kind of one of the things that was a charm about it, was it wasn't, even though it was kind of slasherish, it wasn't so much, it was something like realistically, if you see those kind of movies even to this day where it's like, the wrong part of town, these small towns, you don't know what's happening out there, and something like this is very conceivable.
I live in a small town. I may know some people like that.
Yeah, you just never know. Like, places people don't typically go, like out there in the middle of nowhere. It's just like stuff like that can happen. So that's kind of one of the reasons I had to put it on my list. Now I'm curious to see what you picked on your list, because we're kind of getting down to like the top 5 here. So it's pretty big time.
Yeah, my number 5 is, I don't really want to say obscure, but I feel like it's one that you won't see on lists too often. It's actually this movie that I just kind of randomly seen years ago. I was bored at night, and I think it was AMC. I just saw it on, watched it. It was fascinating to me. It was called Dragonwyck, and it's like this movie from the 40s that had Vincent Price in it. And Vincent Price, period, is just this creepy dude. So anytime you put him in a movie, it's automatically creepy. But basically, it's about him. He lives in a castle, and he's this rich guy, and he woos this young lady to marry him, and he seems like he's nice at first, but as the movie goes on, he just gets creepier and creepier, and at one point, she's gonna have his baby, but then she loses the baby, and he sees that as a sign of weakness, and he starts losing his mind, and he's trying to kill her in these subtle ways. He brings this plant into her room that is poison or something like that. I haven't seen it in years, but I really enjoyed it, and it was really kind of different for a movie back then too, because it was had this really creepy goth feel to it, and I don't know if you've ever even heard of it or not, but I really liked it a lot.
I seem to remember you telling me about that. I remember you showing me some clips from that movie too at some point. I don't fully remember it too much, but I remember you told me about it and showed me it, and it definitely looked pretty creepy. Just like you said, the feel of it was different, especially for its time period, and it just seemed like an interesting premise too, because again, it's something that is out of the ordinary that could happen. Kind of one of those things where it's there really could be a guy out there like that, scary as that sounds.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to see a remake of that. I know remakes sometimes can be good, sometimes can be bad, but
I definitely think the premise alone could still fit today.
Yeah, I think a 2017 version of that would be quite interesting. Johnny Depp in the role of Vincent Price or something.
Could definitely see him in that. But yeah.
Number 4.
See, now we kind of get to what I feel like, I don't want to say are cliche horror movies, but ones you got to kind of pick for, at least on my end. And I actually went with Child's Play 2 here. So I kind of went with the...
So did I.
Yeah. Right? So we picked the same one for number 4 too? Wow.
Kinda. I actually picked Child's Play 2 and 3. I couldn't decide between the two, so I just made it a tie.
Yeah, it's funny. I like number 1, but I feel like at least for me, number 3 I kind of remember too. It's a military one, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of Chucky movies out there, so I gotta remember. But yeah, I like that one too. But I feel like number 2 for me is kind of like the one I always enjoy. Whenever they show it, I enjoy seeing the most, because I like number 1, but it's kind of confined. Whereas number 2 kind of has all these different fun scenes. I like the military one too, because it has its own fun scenes. But I kind of went with 2 because I want to pick one specific one. But I could definitely definitely see why.
I like the ending of the third one. That's in like that amusement park place or whatever.
Yeah, that's
I
what I
always
was
like
thinking.
that.
Yeah, and I kind of like the different strategies too. Like they had like just the evil stuff they had Chucky do. Like they had him like switch the bullets and the guns, like to actual bullets and stuff like that. Like just fun stuff in that movie. Just kind of unique stuff that you don't usually see.
Yeah, I love those movies as a kid. I couldn't decide between the second and the third, so I just went with a tie. I feel like I need to actually go back and watch those movies because I haven't seen them in many years, but I definitely love those two. And that's kind of where my love of those movies stopped. I had no desire to see Bride of Chucky or Seed of Chucky or whatever else came out. I know you said that the latest one was pretty good. And I did see that scene where like Andy was in like the end credit scene or whatever. I did like that, but I have no desire to see those movies past the first three, which I think are perfection to me, anyways.
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment. We'll probably go over a top 10 bad horror movie list sometime, so I'm sure one of those will make it on there. But I've seen all those movies. Yeah, Curse of Chucky kind of went back to what the original Charmer Chucky was. I think the only difference there is that you're kind of used to Chucky kind of talking and kind of being smarmy, but in that movie he's kind of more just a creepy doll type, so it's kind of different in a sense, but kind of went back to at least a more serious tone of it.
It turned into like a comedy, like a dark comedy.
Yeah, it was basically a parody of himself, but. Yeah, I definitely can easily, I think number 2 and number 3 are both. I think number 1, 2 is a classic. It's just hard to choose between them, but I feel like number 2 works just for me too.
Number 3.
All right, again, we're going into kind of the cliche ones, but I had to go with Friday the 13th here. I kind of value that one a little less than the others because I feel like, sometimes you think of that as a little less of a story, and I feel like, in a sense it's still a pretty good story in general. Though I kind of like the whole idea that, even though this guy, kills people, he does it because obviously he was tortured in this place, and it kind of, lingers with them, and anyone who visits there just kind of, feels his wrath that he felt as a kid. So I kind of had to go with that one. I feel like, the original, you can't beat that because I feel like, not all the sequels are bad or anything like that, and even the remake I didn't mind too much, but I feel like the original was just like, it just told the story well, and it was kind of just the original of its time, the impact it had. So I'm gonna go with that.
What was the one where, like, I think it might have been 5 or 6, where, Jason killed the guy that played Horshack at the beginning of the movie?
See, I remember that. I'm just bad with numbers. I don't remember the exact one, but I remember that.
I remember a friend I had in high school, and I were watching that on Halloween night, and we were just laughing hard at the idea of Horshack being killed. And he was done in like this over-the-top way where he just has this scream on his face, like, ah! And then there was like this opening that almost made like Jason look like James Bond or something, and it's like, I can't take this seriously.
That is a lot of the Jason movies in this. That's kind of why I said like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is kind of like a difference from that, because that's more the more serious. Well, there's supernatural elements to it too, but I mean, there's more, of a serious tone to the killings. Whereas like there's one, Friday the 13th movie where, because I, every so often, like every Halloween they just kind of show these, so I kind of like see them often. There's one where like he's like fighting this boxer guy on the roof, and he just lets the boxer guy kind of tire himself out and like throws him off the roof in this over the top way. So it's kind of, you just have all these different over the top things, and as the movies go on, there's obviously good and bad ones, but I think the original just kind of stands true in its own. I think that's more so the more serious type of one that's not as over the top. It's just, it is what it is. It tells a story well. It kind of involves his mother, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to that. I think it's just kind of iconic in culture, and as a kid, obviously, it scared me quite a bit, so I got to go with that.
Well, my number 3 is, again, a movie that I don't think you'll be seeing on too many of these lists, but I really loved it. It was The Stepfather from, I think, 2009, which... some people would argue maybe it's not a horror movie, maybe it's more of a thriller, but I really liked it, and I think I liked it so much because I kind of related to it, and that I've never really liked or trusted anyone that my mom dated, and like the guy in the movie was like this protective son, and I was kind of like the same way, so it was almost like I could really relate to like the main character in the story, and it was basically this guy who wasn't who he said he was, and he was planning on killing the guy's mom, and I really enjoyed that movie.
I never seen that movie, actually. I remember the previews. I remember you talking about wanting to see it. I'd never seen the movie, but definitely it looked kind of creepy from the way it goes. And movies like that are this weird gray area too for me, where it's like, in a way they are horror movies, and I know there's a thriller category too, but I think, in a sense it's just kind of one of those things where you kind of have to look at it that way. Like, I think anything that kind of scares you is kind of just generally a horror movie, but it's just one of those things where I can definitely see why you would pick that on that list.
It's a more realistic type of horror movie.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of the thing with that. Sometimes you get like ones that are like that and ones that are over the top. I think they both can fit in the category.
Numero dos.
All right, we're getting close to the end here, but my number 2 is actually the original Halloween, which, again, there are many sequels and some good and bad, but I feel like the original kind of just speaks to tone. I feel like, in a sense, too, just just it being named Halloween and just kind of the iconic nature of, all that stuff happening on Halloween is kind of one of the reasons I chose it, because it's kind of nostalgic for me every year on Halloween to kind of see that. It's kind of like a staple of Halloween for me whenever Halloween comes around, like just seeing a marathon of movies and just kind of, just getting a feel for that again. And obviously, I think it was again, there's another story. I like how they're all varied too, like the kind of the main horror villains. Like, even though they're slasher films and you kind of have them just going around killing people, I think in a sense too, just kind of the backgrounds kind of help. The whole his killing his sister aspect and him going to a mental hospital and escaping, and just the idea of that. Dr. Loomis trying to save everyone from him. I think it's just one of those things that kind of stands out. And eventually down in the sequels, they kind of involve more kids and stuff, and it's just different in a horror movie sense. And I think it just kind of still stands out on its own.
I feel like I live under a rock or something, but that's another one I've never seen. But I know anytime I heard about Michael Myers, I always pictured like the guy from Austin Powers and Wayne's World, like, going around killing people.
The funny part is, even back in middle school, there was a kid in my class named Michael Myers. I was just kind of like,
wow.
Obviously, he got the jokes a lot, and he was kind of like, real funny. But it's just kind of funny that there was a guy named Michael Myers in my class. But yeah, I definitely
think jokes about the horror movie and like the Wayne's World guy.
Probably, but I think that's probably the most surprising one that you've never seen, just because it's just such an iconic movie that would have you came across it. But I think I don't know if it's still held up these days, but but I feel like one day I'd like to actually see you watch it, just see your thoughts on it.
Maybe I will. I'd be interested in checking it out, maybe. Well, my number 2 is actually a movie we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, the original Child's Play, which I kind of get your reasoning why you put the sequels above it, but I don't know, there's something about the original that I always liked. It was the first one I saw as a kid, and you actually kind of got to see Chucky, before he was the doll, and he, did that, satanic, thing where he put himself in the doll, and just, I always really liked that movie.
Oh, it's definitely a good movie. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with any of the three. So for me, it was just trying to pick the one I enjoyed the most. But I definitely can't at all blame you for putting number 1 on your list. It kind of just one of those things where it's all of them have their own appeal to them, and I think that's probably one of the creepiest parts of the movies too. Is because I mentioned the kids being included in the the Halloween movies later on. I think just the idea of him stalking this kid and trying to take his soul is something that you just how is that not scary? How is that not unsettling? Especially when you get to you said the ritual stuff where he's chanting and stuff, and you hear the thunder, and so it's just such creepy tones to it. So I definitely can agree with that.
You know what else I think is creepy too, and I kind of mentioned this with Cujo. I Cujo went from this friendly dog to a monster. With Child's Play 2 and 3, Andy knew exactly what Chucky was. He was afraid of Chucky. For a lot of the first one, he thought Chucky was his friend, and that makes it more terrifying later when Chucky shows his true colors.
Yeah, I remember, even some of the stuff they did there. I remember the babysitter, he goes over that window. It was just so crazy at the time to see this doll doing that and stuff. So yeah, I definitely can agree with that too.
There's always a little comedy in those movies too. Let's be honest, but
yeah, I feel that's a little bit of charm to it. You just have kind of the comic nature of them.
Here we are. What, Joe, is your favorite horror movie of all time?
I would think we agree with this guy. I feel this movie would be on your list someplace. My favorite horror movie of all time is definitely Nightmare on Elm Street, just because I feel that's one of those movies that kind of not only does it kind of have the slasher feel to it sometimes, but it kind of has a story to it, and it kind of has a iconic villain to it that kind of, I think, overrides every other villain, just because he's not just the guy that goes around killing you. He's the guy that mentally kills you. He takes you into his own dream world, and I think that's just one of the things that's one of the most fascinating things about that. I think in a sense that's one of the things that can draw in even people who just aren't fans of slasher flicks, because you see this guy who's just this cerebral villain, and he's not this good guy, and it's just you just see what he does to people, how he does it. It's just he gives them their worst nightmares, and I think it's just an iconic series that to me has to be number 1 on my end for my favorite.
Honestly, I should have put that in here because I have seen at least a couple of them. And Freddy Krueger, I mean, he's iconic. But you know what movie I always liked the best out of those was the Wes Craven's New Nightmare one.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. That's a good one too.
I thought that was a really cool concept. How like they made it like it was the movies, like it was the actors that was in the movies, but then like Freddy actually turns out to be real.
Yeah,
I thought that was a really cool concept.
Yeah, definitely. I like that movie too. And I'm curious what your number one, because you said you should have put it on there, so I'm curious. What's your number one?
The Birds.
The Bird. That's right. I forgot it had come up.
That's always been my favorite horror movie. For many, many years, I was terrified of birds because of this movie. Just the idea of all these flocks of birds, because you never know if something like that might happen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Maybe the end of the world comes and the birds go crazy or something. Who knows?
I mean, let's be honest. There are birds out there that eat roadkill and sometimes humans. So it's like, so there are birds already kind of out there like that. It's just these are more vicious cycle of them.
Anytime you watch a horror movie and it makes you afraid to go outside because you know something like this could happen, you know it's a good one. I mean, I think yours is a good one too, because like you watch Nightmare on Elm Street, you're afraid to go to sleep.
Oh, exactly.
Anytime you watch like a horror movie and you're afraid to do something, you know that's kind of a good horror movie. But The Birds, I mean, I'm a huge Hitchcock fan, and this was always my favorite, just because I saw it when I was like really, really young, and it kind of traumatized me. And from what I hear, like Hitchcock like traumatized like the actress quite a bit too. Like he actually used real birds, and like the birds were like pecking at her and stuff. And Hitchcock was a pretty sadistic dude.
Yeah, he's quite the character. If you look into his history, you kind of see why he was. Honestly, I'm not like being judgmental here, but I think a lot of people who have make these movies kind of have that twisted sense to them, in a sense of being able to draw from that. So they turn that into art in a sense, good or bad.
Well, that was our top 10 favorite horror movies. Again, not the best, but our favorites. And I definitely, at some point, we definitely need to do our top 10 worst horror movies.
There'd be way more choices there too. So I definitely,
especially for you, because you watch a ton of bad horror movies. You love bad horror movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that. If you like our list, or if you thought that we missed something, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we're definitely going to keep the show going. And not exactly sure what we're doing for our next top 10, but we'll come up with something. Going to do this again. It was fun. Hope you all enjoyed listening, and see you next time.
Definitely. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoy this concept, and see you next time. Don't you dare miss it.
Just adding a little addition here to the show, because I feel like an idiot for not picking They Live. We were talking after the podcast, and I forgot how it was even brought up, but then it made me think of They Live. And I just want to say that if I would have remembered, They Live would have been like number 2 or number 3 on my list, because that is an awesome movie.
It has to have been an awesome movie, and one I forgot too, which was amazing to me. Like it just kind of came up randomly, and I was like, yeah, that's right. But yeah, I definitely feel like that's one that is definitely iconic in its own way too.
Let that be a lesson to us. Better prepare for these things.
Yeah, there's so many to choose from that you're going to be bound to forget some.
All right, everybody. See you next week.
All right, see you next week.